Let's talk about this year's draft. Something that was particularly interesting. There were 18 freshmen selected in the first round, including 9 of the first 10 picks. But 18 freshmen taken in the first round.
No seniors?
There were some seniors taken, but 18 freshmen taken, including 9 of the first 10 picks.
9 out of the first 10?
9 out of the first 10 were freshmen.
Any seniors?
Huh?
Any seniors?
Do not. Let me double check. I don't think so.
No, you ain't got to check.
No. But none selected in the second round.
No what?
Freshmen selected in the second round.
They weren't in the first round.
But Jay, question for you. What does that say about the league's approach to the draft?
Niggas in the back.
18 freshmen first round, 0 freshmen selected in the second round.
Oh, no. All right.
Well, I mean, what it says to me, and there's not enough data to determine all of this, but what it says to me is the players are making money in college now. Unless they're going to be high picks, they're not going. And they're going to stay and make money in college and wait until they can be drafted where they want to be drafted. And you're not seeing as many. So the second round was not perhaps as powerful as it's been in other years because guys can make money now. And so they can make more by staying in college. They stay another year and then go into the NBA. It's happening all over the place. Guys are staying 5, sometimes 6 years now in college because of the money. And you're seeing more international players come to college that have come over in the past. So it's just delaying things by at least a year for a number of guys. And some of these guys, look, if there were some guys that reclassed up because next year is a more powerful year in the draft, and they could probably go a little bit higher this year. So guys came in early that would have been high school seniors last year. Like Cooper Flagg was 17 years old when he played in college. I think Gilbert, you were 17 when you went to Arizona your first year. But that might have been more the norm 25 years ago, but it's not the norm now. Now they tend to be older when they're coming into college. But everybody's trying to get their clock started earlier when they're the real top picks, kind of the cream of the cream. They're coming out, but otherwise they're going to stay.
So what's changed from back when I played in the last 15 years where the overseas guys are eligible to play in college basketball? Has it always been that?
Yeah, they've always been eligible, but back when you were playing at Arizona, guys were property of their teams, so they had professional contracts when they were that age.
Oh.
And sometimes they couldn't get out of those deals; they'd have to be bought out, and teams were willing to wait. And heck, when I was in college, a lot of the top international players were Soviets. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't leave. There were some players that couldn't get out. Like Arvydas Sabonis, Domantas Sabonis' dad,
the legend.
He might have been the best player in the world, but it was the former Soviet Union. And, he could be drafted. They weren't letting him out. And he only came to the U.S. after the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union kind of crashed.
Right?
Oh, janky knee. Shella, his former self, but still balling with the Blazers back in those days. So let's shift over to the college side. So as part of the settlement in the House versus NCAA antitrust lawsuit, NCAA implemented a salary cap to pay student athletes directly, initial limit of close to $21 million per school annually. Expectation is the bulk of those funds will go to football, men's basketball, with athletes still being able to sign NIL deals with a legitimate business at fair market value, whatever that means. But what impact will NCAA's new salary cap have on the college basketball landscape?
What it's going to do is, so this settlement means that the schools can pay the athletes directly now. So the last few years during NIL, they were indirect payments through these collectives. And I didn't anticipate that collectives would pop up. I knew that money would find a way. It's like the old Jurassic Park movie when they say life will find a way. Money finds a way. And so once players were allowed to be compensated in any fashion, you knew that the money was going to find the players, and it has through these collectives. So what the theory is now is that close to 21 million, I think the number's 20.5, whatever it is, but that's for all athletes across the board in Division I. Each school can pay up to 20.5. They don't have to pay a nickel if they don't want to, but that's not very much money when you start thinking about every sport. And so, but you can still have what they call third-party NIL, but now it has to be legit, like sort of fair market NIL deals, like for commercials and things like that. But they're still going to find a way to pay players what they think they're worth, and we'll see if the NCAA is able to police that effectively. I'm dubious of that. But really, what we have now is just one illegal wage cap in place of another that's been blessed by a court. And but what you're going to see, your players are going to be signed to contracts. Those contracts will have buyouts in them. Roster sizes have been reduced across the board, so there'll be fewer places that you can transfer. Transfers will still happen, but they won't be as many as there are now once they sign players to contracts. And then we'll see. The NCAA is going to have a time period. I don't know whether it's 3 years, 5 years, whatever, where they can try to figure out a long-term structure. So either collective bargaining with the players, which can be problematic. I still think it can work. Or they go to Congress and say, give us a law that will give us some runway here. And, basically taking the settlement to Congress and saying, here's this settlement, make this into law. And but I don't think Congress is going to give the NCAA everything they want. The first thing I would ask is, all right, you're going to cap the players. How about we cap the coaches? Like if this is supposed to be about academics and this wonderful enterprise we have that America seems to love, then why do the coaches get unlimited money and the players don't? That would be my biggest question for Congress if they jumped into it.
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons that that I had Elijah go up a year, because I heard that they were going to basically hard cap, and the money that he can get today versus tomorrow is very different. Do you think it's Do you think it's fair with the NIL side to be judged by NCAA, where the market value? How do you know what a kid's market value is? And like if you can't tell who's popular from the market size, and the fact that you can control it now. So if someone wants to go in and pay someone $100,000, the NCAA now can say, well, I don't think he's worth that. I only think he's worth $2. Do you think that's actually?
They can do it.
Yeah, now you can.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
I think it's going to be, Gilbert, to your question, I think it's going to be hard for the NCAA to police. What I think they're looking to do is try to limit, say you at the University of Arizona, if you were playing now, and a local car dealer says, all right, we're going to give you $2 million, but the car dealership, we're going to give you $2 million to do commercials for our car dealership and be a spokesperson for our dealership. And the dealership only grosses $1 million a year. They're not going to, nobody's going to pay anybody that amount of money when they're doing that. It's just they're just funneling money to a player as a pay-for-play thing. And I'm good with that. I think they should be allowed. I think your market value is what anybody wants to pay you.
Yeah, okay.
But since they're doing this cap, that's what they're looking to stop. They're not going to police some deal that pays a guy $50,000 or $150,000 or something like that. They're not going to worry about that. They're going to worry about the really big numbers that they're going, whoa. That nobody would pay this amount absent trying to get around the cap number. So
that hurts.
That idea, but I don't like the idea they're capping them at $20 million in the first place.
Yeah.
If the school wants to pay, if they're willing, if an SEC football program is paying their strength coach $1.5 million, why should a wide receiver be limited? That makes no sense to me. You can't tell me that the guy catching the ball is more important than the guy saying, "Hey, lift that weight." I just don't think that makes any sense.
All right, so when you open it up, unbiased, and you're thinking about the landscape of $20 million and
That weight.
as a recruiting tool for a school, and you can't, because the NIL part of it is actually looked at too, so I can't funnel money through, secondary entities. Does that push a lot of players to just certain schools now?
No, I think that's always been the case. The top 100 players have always wound up at basically the same schools. It may differ here or there. And you may see Doug McDermott goes to Creighton. Well, his dad was the coach. Like that kind of thing will happen. But by and large, mid-major schools have access now to better players than they've ever had because they can pay now. So just simple principles of economics, like Wichita State can afford to pay Kansas's fifth best player more than Kansas is willing to pay. So you may say, you know what, I'll go to Wichita State and be the man there and make more money than if I was the fifth best player at Kansas. That kind of thing can happen. But before, like when you were in school, when I was in school, you went, even back in the dark ages when I was in school, you basically went where you were going to have the best experience, the most exposure, the best coaching, all that stuff. Now it's open for you to add money as a variable. And look, reasonable people can look at this differently. I do think there is something to the idea of too much too soon for a young person, but that's for the young person and their families and their advisor to determine, not for the NCAA and not for the Big Ten or the SEC. That's for individuals to determine what's too much too soon. But what I'm seeing now, and it's not everybody, but these young players now are becoming financially literate. They're making really good decisions. They're putting money away. Look, they may buy themselves a car and treat themselves nice and buy something that, as older people would say, look, you'd be better off putting that money away. But they're putting a fair amount of money away now and starting themselves out to a really nice future. And they're doing business deals. They're much savvier than we were because we weren't allowed access to money. If we took a sandwich, we got in trouble.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'll give you one example. I hope I'm not rambling too long, but Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, won a national championship a couple of years. After his junior year, I was on a panel with him and Tom Izzo in Detroit. And when the discussion was over, there were questions asked. So somebody raises their hand and asks Blake Corum, why did you decide to come back for your senior year at Michigan? And Corum's a really thoughtful young person. He says, look, I know what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to say I want to finish my degree, I want to win a national championship, and I want to win the Heisman Trophy. And then he said, all those things are true. I want to do all those things. But he also said, I've had an interest in real estate. And with my NIL money, I put together a real estate portfolio, and I wanted another year to build that portfolio up before I went into the NFL. And you're going, hey, man, that's next level thinking for a 21-year-old young person. And they have the opportunity to do that now, and we did not. Like I was on a different level than all you guys. I played overseas. I was a good player, but I wasn't a great player like you guys. But when I started making money, I had no idea what to do with it. I'd never had access before. And I didn't even have time to have a job. So, but when I did do some stuff during the summer, I had to pay tax on that stuff. So they were okay with us getting a job and paying tax and doing all these things when we had to go get a cheap job somewhere. But they weren't okay with us making our fair market value while they were making money off us. And I had a problem with that.
Let me ask you this, Jay. Do you think, what percentage of athletes coming into college right now are actually focused on their academics?
The same percentage that were focused on it when you were a player, when I was a player.
Okay.
And
okay.
Look,
hold on. Let me finish the question.
Oh, I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
So within that, you say we're here for a job, right? We're here to become professional athletes. So we've been paying amateurs. We've been paying a bunch of amateurs to be financially literate in a realm where they have no experience. So we're paying amateurs before they perform. And in my book, I wrote about performance-based requirements for college athletes. They come in and creating a school of sports, just like you have a school of medicine, a school of law, post-grad. And having these access points gives the actual coach, the weight trainer, and the player performance-based requirements before they get paid. So you can't just get this check, show up on campus and say, I'm worth this, you should be paying me this, that, and the other. It's based on your performance, your preseason, your postseason, and how far you go in the tournament. And all of your checks will be segmented based on how you develop, how you advance, how you propel. And I think they have gotten away from that because we're talking nothing about, how kids are learning. Like you just said, the financial literacy part of college is learning how to be a thousandaire before you become a millionaire. And if that's not important for the kid and their family, then we're just throwing money at an ATM and we're just seeing it regurgitate. So the value, I think, of the athlete needs to get to learning about how to perform before you get paid.
I think that's great, but that's a decision that each school needs to make for itself. So you went to Carolina and went to Duke. If Duke wants to do it that way and Carolina doesn't, then they're going to have to see how it works out in the marketplace. So if Duke tells Cooper Flagg, hey, you're going to have to earn your money here, so we're gonna do it incentive based, and it's going to be based on your performance as an athlete, but also your performance as a student and what you do in community service. And then in year 2 or 3, you can make some real money, but you're going to get a freshman pay scale, and everybody's going to make that. And Carolina says, no, we're going to pay you what we think you're worth, and more guys are going to go to Carolina.
Yeah.
That's the way business usually works. So they can do that if they want to. Just like they don't. Not everybody pays their coaches $10 million. Alabama paid Nick Saban $10 million. Other schools said, well, we don't have that, or we don't want to pay that. That's fine. Then you're gonna have a smaller pool of coaches to choose among. Well, go ahead, do it that way. And the Ivy League doesn't want to pay their player, then don't, and see how it works out for you. Maybe it'll be great, maybe it won't. But the market should determine that, not some blanket. Like the thing I had a problem with, Rashad, isn't that individual schools wanted to pay or didn't want to pay. It was that there was a unilateral rule imposed upon the players that every school had to abide by. They all agreed that they weren't going to pay, and some of them wanted to. But that's called an antitrust violation. That's illegal. If they did that in any other business context, they'd be hauled into court, and they ultimately were and lost. But they got protected for way too long by the courts. So schools can do it however they want. Like with that 20 million cap, they don't have to pay a nickel if they don't want. They could say, hey, look, you're here to go to school and play ball. If you want money, go somewhere else.
Let me ask you this, Jay.
Go somewhere else.
Let me ask you this. So the 20 million each school, is that including HBCUs?
Yeah, it includes everybody.
All right. So let's just say that before HBCUs didn't have that type of funding, correct?
They still don't.
Right. So when you look at the opportunity for a HBCU to offer a kid like Ace Bailey to come down that before wasn't available, we're now changing the landscape from what you just said about Duke or Carolina deciding, yeah, we'll take the standardized freshman pay scale, we'll do that, or we'll go our route and we'll pay how we want. The HBCUs, the Gramblings, the Howards, they can now go chase guys that they couldn't chase before because they have what you would call a cap, luxury tax. And I think now that happens, how do you market when you've never had the marketing ability to go after these players? How do you sell? How do you do these things for other universities that are not big powerhouses?
Look, the market conditions are similar to what they've always been. So you're still going to have, like, before you could pay, players were going where the environments were the best. So schools were building these lavish facilities to try to attract players. You're still looking at a school of lesser resources going, well, wait a minute. Even though they can pay me now, they're not going to pay me as much as if I go to Alabama or LSU. And this particular school, whether it's an HBCU or some low major, whatever, they don't have the money to fly us private everywhere. Yeah. So I want to do that. I want to fly private. I want to play on television. I want to do this. I want to do that. So you're still going to see the top players go to largely the same places they've always gone, with maybe some exceptions here or there. But you're also still going to see the same caliber player fall, if you will, to the same level they've always gone. The one good thing about the transfer portal, in my view, and there are problems with it, it's not ideal, but a player who's pegged out of high school, like this guy's too small or he's not as good or whatever, and has to go to some mid-major and then he crushes it, like Walter Clayton Jr.
Yeah.
He's a highly recruited football player, but he wasn't a valued basketball player. He goes to Iona, plays for Rick Pitino, kills it there, and then he goes where he wanted to go from the beginning, goes to Florida, and made a bunch more money and exposure. Everybody knew his name. If he'd stayed at Iona, only guys like me would have known who he was. And I don't think that's right. that you're stuck with where you got recruited out of high school and you got to stay there for 4 years or give up a year of your life if you want to leave. I don't think that's ever been fair or ever been right. And I think now that's being rectified in the players' favor.
Well, Jay, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to pull up to Gil's Arena, talk NBA draft, college hoops, and everything else. Wishing you best of luck with everything.